If this doesn't change, and change soon, the United States will have an economic heart attack. So says one of the world's most successful hedge fund managers, Ray Dalio. Let's jump in and see what Mr. Dalio has to say. He was recently interviewed on CNBC, and here's his first quote. "It's like if I was a doctor and I was speaking to you about your condition, I would say to you, this is now very, very serious. All of these are major problems. What you need to do is cut your deficit from about 7.5% of gross domestic product to 3% of GDP. And you can do that. There are certain things that you can do that cut in a certain way that'll make it much healthier. So the real problem is a political problem." Okay, so he goes, I want to keep going with this quote. Ray Dalio goes on to say, "I want to alert people. I want to alert government officials. I want to help you, you know, so I feel like a doctor. And then I would say, everybody, politically, if this doesn't happen, we have the equivalent of, you know, an economic heart attack or a heart attack of the bond market. Then you know who's responsible, because it can happen." So what is Mr. Dalio saying? Right now, because the United States is spending more than we take in tax revenue, we have to borrow money. And there's, just like any of us, you know, there comes a time of reckoning. And Mr. Dalio, who's very, very bright, and his firm, Bridgewater Associates, is filled with really smart people. They manage over $100 billion. And what they're saying is that time of reckoning is a lot sooner than what we think. He says, "I recognize the problem, and then there are actions that are being taken. How do you cut costs? How do you raise productivity? Make sure you really know what you're doing and you're practical, and do it on the conservative side, because you know how much can the cutting really be. We'll see, and the consequences of the cutting in each of those. So you better take a sharp pencil and be conservative." So what he's saying is that at some point, people stop lending us money. There's another quote where he says that when you have to start borrowing money to pay the interest, to pay the debt back on your existing debt, that's when things begin to rapidly spiral out of control. So is the United States at that point? A lot of people would argue that that we're very close to that point. And then there's other people that would say, you know, not so quickly. Because the U.S. is fortunate in that we're issuing our debt in a currency that we can print. Now, if only it were that easy, right? If we could just print our way out of paying down our debt. But unfortunately, as we all know, that would cause inflation. There's only so much the government can do there. So what Ray Dalio is saying is we don't have to cut the deficit to zero. But at 7.5% of GDP, that's too much. And the debt is increasing too quickly. So what does this mean for you and I? What should we be doing differently, if anything? The first thing is, you know, just recognize that there are these events that could happen. And as Warren Buffett, another famous investor, says, you know, the stock market can go from a green light to a red light very, very quickly, and not even pass through yellow. And for some of us, you know, since the February 19th high of 2025, the market is down almost 10%. So we're close to correction territory. And for some of us, we feel like we might be at this point already. And nobody knows. The reality is, you know, when people stop buying the U.S. government debt, that's when we're at that point. When there's a big pullback and all of a sudden the interest rates that we have to pay to get additional debt go way up. What I do know right now is that the U.S. debt is at about $38 trillion. And on a per person basis, that is over $100,000. I believe it's $105,000 per man, woman, and child in the United States. That's an enormous amount of debt. If we assume there's 5% interest, which is, just give me easy numbers to work with, that's over $5,000 in interest payments each year per man, woman, and child. So for a family of 4, That's $20,000. Now, what is the median household income in the United States right now? It's at about $75,000. So if you assume they pay $15,000 in taxes, that's $60,000 in take-home pay. So that $20,000 in interest payments is 1/3 of the median household's take-home pay. That's enormous. So if we're not at that point, we might be getting to that point quickly. So what do? What we do is we realize that there are these events that can happen and can happen quickly. And there's a saying in my industry that the stock market takes the escalator up, but it takes the elevator down. Actually, the saying is it jumps out the window. It goes down quickly. So we have to prepare before the correction starts. So yes, we're down 10%, almost 10% since the February 19th highs. That takes us back to the end of the summer range of 2024 is where we're at now. So, that's when the market was at an all-time high and continued to go high. But if you look at it from a date standpoint, we're really where we were at the end of the summer of 2024 right now. So if you look at your portfolio and you say, I've gotten ahead of my skis, maybe because the stock market was up so much over the last 2 years. If you look at the October 2022 highs to the October 2024 where the stock market was, the S&P 500 was up 60%, 60%. That's an enormous move up. But as we all know, and what we might be seeing now is, anything that can go up by 60% can also go down. And could it go down by 60%? I don't know. It could. During the great financial crisis, the market dropped almost 60%. It was in the mid 50%, the S&P 500. So could the market go down that much? I don't think it's going to. That would be very unusual, but it could. Could we have a flat decade in front of us where the stock market really doesn't do much for the next decade, where we're essentially all the gains we're going to get out of the stock market we've already gotten in the last 3, 4, 5 years? The market has had really a tremendous move up since 2019. So could that happen? It could. I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody has a crystal ball. But what we do know is come up with a long-term stock allocation, stick with that over time. And historically, even if you look at people that were unfortunate and invested before the Great Depression started, or just before the dot-com bubble, or just before the Great Financial Crisis, or even weeks before COVID became an issue, over time, all of those people have done fine in the stock market. So we might have some scary weeks in front of us. We might have some scary months in front of us. But batten down the hatches now. Look at your portfolio. Go back to your long-term asset allocation. None of this is investment advice. None of this is financial advice for you. I don't know your situation. But I do know the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are come up with an asset allocation that's right for you. What percent of your portfolios in stocks, what percent in bonds, and do that when your mind is calm, where you can make rational decision making, versus when you're panicking. And if you like this video, the YouTube algorithm says this is the next video of mine you should watch. Thanks for watching this one. Bye-bye.